audience might be able to read between the lines of each sentence she uttered and judge them inadequate. She imagined someone jumping up to challenge her, asking her what had really happened and what she really felt. But, of course, nobody did. Why would they? She was among friends, and they believed her, felt for her. She wondered what they might say if they knew the truth. Sarah Collingborne sat near the front of the church with her sister, Frances Barden. The makeup of the congregation made Sarah reflect on the many women in the village who were now, one way or another, without their menfolk. Certainly the toll the war was taking on the community was considerable. Sarah's own husband, Adam, had chosen to leave his post as vicar of St. Mark's in order to serve as an army chaplain, and had then been captured at Dunkirk. At least she knew he was alive, and she held fast to the hope he would, one day, return. She glanced sideways at her sister. Frances was alone too, in a way, widowed when her husband Peter was killed in a car crash. On her other side sat Noah, Peter's son by another woman, whose existence Frances had only found out about after Peter's death. She had adopted the little boy, but Sarah knew Frances missed Peter, and missed the vision of him she had believed in before his death brought his secrets to light. In death, our secrets, however carefully we conceal them, have a habit of revealing themselves, thought Sarah, often in ways no one would ever have predicted. Perhaps we can only hide our true selves for so long. Sarah gazed at Pat, who was speaking with remarkable composure. Sarah was one of the few people who knew about the beatings and bullying to which her friend had been subjected throughout her marriage. Over the years, Pat had become expert at creating the impression that all was well, even when the opposite was true. She looked pale, Sarah thought, her face more lined than a week ago, the telltale smudges beneath the eyes indicative of sleepless nights. She was a little thinner, too, the coat she had on swamping her. Pat was composed on the surface, perhaps, but what was she feeling inside? As Sarah took in her words, she could not help thinking how unfair it was that Bob should be laid to rest with dignity, his reputation unsullied. Yes, he was the writer, the man of letters his wife spoke of. But he was also so much more, so much less. Sarah watched her friend as she paid tribute to a husband she had not loved. A difficult balancing act indeed. It was what Pat didn't say that struck Sarah as significant. No mention of her love for Bob, nor the sense of loss one would expect her to be feeling now that he was gone. Instead, she harked back to the past, recalling how the two of them first met, Bob an aspiring novelist, Pat working for a publisher. It was safer ground than the here and now, and a clever way of suggesting all was well between them without saying anything that wasn't actually true. Sarah understood. It was all a front. Pat simply doing what had become second nature to her over the years. Teresa Lucas had been in two minds about whether to attend the funeral. Since her husband Nick had resumed his duties as a fighter pilot, she had been overwhelmed by anxiety, afraid that he would lose his life. A funeral, she knew all too well, would only make her feel even worse. Given the nature of Nick's job, where death was an occupational hazard, Teresa had become almost primed for the worst thing to happen. Pat's situation, however, could not have been more different. Bob was at home, facing nothing more dangerous than a typewriter, which made his death all the more shocking. It seemed wrong, somehow, against the order of things. Did that make it worse, Teresa wondered? Was loss not simply loss? She chose to sit near the back of the church, close enough to the door.